All right. My name's Peggy Norris, and I live here in Deadwood. And this was my first time to attend the South Dakota Book Festival because I used to work. And I volunteered because I thought it would save me the registration fee, not even knowing it was a free festival. So, but I've had a great time all weekend, and actually, I'm delighted to be here at the poetry session because I'd written one poem in my life and I read it at the open mic the other night. And it inspired me to write a second one yesterday, which I'm still working on and hoping to bring the poetry on the road in a couple of days. So it's been a great weekend. Anyway, so I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the South Dakota Humanities Council, which produces the Festival of Books. And I think you've heard this many times about the QR code for feedback, or go to this sdbookfestival.com. And that donations are always welcome to keep this free. And so have they already done the drawing for the?
No, we'll do it probably Tuesday when we're back in the office.
Okay, so there's still a chance to buy raffle tickets then for the original festival guide cover artwork. And you've probably seen that on all over the place here. So it's $50 for your first raffle entry and $10 for each entry afterwards. So, and also please look at the back of the festival guide and thank those sponsors that have helped make this possible and to keep it free. So, all right, so BrianTurner's books have sold out. But if you have copies, we'll be glad, he'll be glad to sign them for you after the session. For that, I'm going to introduce Brian. BrianTurner has authored 5 collections of poetry, including The Wild Delight of Wild Things and The Goodbye World Poem, and the memoir, My Life as a Foreign Country. He is editor of The Kiss and co-editor of The Strangest of Theater's anthologies. A musician, Turner has also written and recorded several albums with the Interplanetary Acoustic Team, including 1111, Me Smiling, and the Retro Legion's American Undertow. He lives in Orlando, Florida with his dog, Dene, or Den? Anyway, D-E-N-E, however he pronounces that. So welcome, Brian.
Does this thing have wheels? Can I move it around a little bit? It feels like tucked way back here. Maybe I'll motor it around. This is fun. I might just move around and keep you on your toes and stuff. Oh, man, thank you, Mary. I'm going to read a few pieces this morning. It feels like I have to be right there to make this thing work. I don't know. This is going to be tricky. Yeah, but then I got to. There's a little more. There's moving pieces, but I think I'll make this work. We'll make it work. That'll work, right? Okay, it's like being around the campfire, leaning in, you know. All right, let's burn some furniture. Let's get this started, right? I contacted. I don't know if you've ever gone onto Twitter. I don't necessarily recommend it, but there is on Twitter. There's a subset that's kind of nicknamed as Science Twitter, and there's just some amazing people out there. That was the only way that I was able to get a hold of them over the past few years, and just to learn stuff and to get more information. And so I'm going to give you an example of that. Dr. Michelle Troutwine, she helped me with a very curious animal that I'd like to share with you now that we all live with. And she said at one point, it's sort of a meditative process of looking through this microforest of follicles and hairs and looking for just the right potential movement or shape. This is called the lovers. It's near midnight on a Friday, and a mosquito banks in a wide orbit around me. Such quiet determination, such patience. It's not unlike the patience exhibited by the microscopic world as it waits each day for us to sink into the pillows and wander into the hours of dream. If we could look closely enough at our own skin, and if we magnified that landscape so that the fine downy hairs of the body, known as vellus hair, might rise into view like the trunks of saplings, and if we were to walk in that strange grove of leafless trees and then peer down into the pores which hold each knotted root as it forms below, where the well of the follicle is coated in oil secreted by a sebaceous gland, we discover the home of Demodex folliculorum and Demodex brevis, mites. These are microscopic animals, whole communities of them, and they have dwelled in human skin likely since our earliest ancestors looked up in wonder at the stars. With claw-tipped legs and fusiform bodies, they are arachnids, cousin to the spider, and their lives span the duration of about 2 weeks. Some estimates suggest we harbor hundreds of thousands of these animals within the largest organ of our bodies, our skin. Think eyelashes, tiny follicles, and pores within the forehead, nose, cheeks. I know some of you are going to be scrubbing extra tonight when you're going to get out the, get the loofah, come on. By day, they clamp onto the hair follicle, and it's thought that they feed from the oils there. It's possible they might also feed on the ragged waste of dead skin cells. Some suggest that they insert a retractable needle from their mouth organ and then nourish themselves by draining the fluids from within dead cells. They face downward as they feed, as if staring into the burrow they live in, while others work their way into the deepest structures of the pore, except when laying their eggs just outside of the burrow. Did you know this? Does everybody know this? Yeah. You know, well, hopefully we can get to a sweet place. Let's see if we can do this, though. But as we speak, our diaphragms compress in order to funnel air out of the lungs and through the tracheal tube so that it might be modulated within the larynx. The things we say to one another and to ourselves resonate through the bones of our skulls. Sound waves travel throughout our bodies, and that language also travels through the fluid cellular structures of our skin in a muted version of the original, where the mites live. There in the crosshatched shadows where the strands of hair curl over in a gentle matting of keratin and oil. By night, the Demodex mites living in our faces emerge from their dens in search of others to mate with. This is true. They travel at about 16 millimeters per hour, or a little over half an inch. And I wonder if they recognize something in the rise and fall of their terrain as we whispered to one another in the dark, making love in the hours before dawn. I imagine them pausing in their own mating then, or as they traveled from one burrow to another. Under a canopy of fine, tangling hair, they tilt their heads back to take in the darkness, which is sweet and washed in pheromones. Consider how strange the world is, how sweet and fortunate they are to live in this forest of lovers, where the voices of the gods sometimes call out across the sky, and the thunder of it rolls through the living flesh of the world they know as their one and only home. That's happening all the time, every night, you know? So. You could hear she just said, I'm going to have nightmares now. And I'm like, oh, there's all this lovemaking happening, you know? I don't know. I'll have to ask, go on science Twitter. That's a good question. Is that why our skin tingles sometimes? Oh, yeah. It's tantalizing, yeah. I'm going to try this. Let's see if this might be better. This is about jellyfish. It's called The Immortals. That is better. I think the voice comes out better, right? Yeah, okay. Huh. It's like I'm a rookie all over again, every time, you know? Bell-shaped and translucent jellyfish begin their ascent from the ocean floor. They've completed a novel process in the animal kingdom, transdifferentiation. It's a reversal of the biological cycle as we know it, undoing the narrative arc, tracing birth to adulthood before the inevitable decline and death. The jellyfish upend everything we know about death in flora and fauna. At the cellular level, they grow younger when the time comes to die. They transform backwards into a nascent version of themselves before starting the process over. It doesn't mean they're incapable of dying. It's simply not in their nature. They rise to the midnight dark waters and into bands of sunlight the way thought forms in the subconscious before burning in waves across the neocortex of the human brain. And as they rise fathom by fathom, they become lighter. As each incarnation returns, history unfolds and the world is made new. They rise into the age of agriculture with its domestication of wild grain, with the comprehension of seed to stem to fruit. They witness the emergence of cities, wheels and alphabets and metallurgy, Buddha and Confucius, Jesus and Muhammad, the age of flight and the age of information. The jellyfish descend to regenerate and then rise through it all, limpid and curious, as astronauts step upon the lunar surface and as armies kill each other without cease. Humans turn their thoughts toward Mars and beyond, as the jellyfish sink down into the ancient shadow where they have always gone, as if death were a form of sleep, a dream from which they are revived, one lifetime to another, cycling through the stages of life as the elastic architecture of their bodies is made strange and new all at once, blooming. Starfields glimmer in the wave tops above. Sunlight scatters at dawn and dusk. The ocean is a silver film of moonlight stilling itself, and through it all, the jellyfish, the immortals. They have come to watch galaxies loosen their spiraling stars as photons shimmer on the interstellar breeze. They are steeped in time. They have learned to reinvent themselves in defiance of the body's undoing. They rise from their own deaths. They rise from the bottom of the sea. Soft bells, diaphanous and fine, the universe offers them wonder, and they gather in their multitudes to take it all in. So that's if you we could I appreciate the process, but we'll just plow through some of these things, right? And but you could throw some heckling in. Nobody does that enough, you know. Throw me some good one. Keep me on my toes a little bit, you know. Yeah, it's okay, you know. Do you have your phones with you? Yeah, turn them on real quick. Let's turn on. If you want to, turn on the phone. I'll give you my phone number. Okay. You could text me if you want. All of you, this is amazing. None of you are reaching for your phones. You're like, nah, it's okay. You got one? Okay, I got one. Okay, I'll give you my number. All right? All right, my number is 407. I'll say it twice just in case. 407-864-2586. 407-864-2586. That's not like a burner phone or anything. That's just my phone, you know. So I won't, if someone calls, I usually don't answer. But if you text me, I'll try to text you back within a day or two, you know. You'll probably lose that number. But the idea is a seed, so that if somewhere down the road, if I can be of some help with some project you're doing or something, maybe remember, be like, I forgot the damn phone number. Where did I put that? You know. But you can always contact me through the publisher, and they'll forward it on to me. If I can be of help, I'll try to roll up my sleeves. So. This next poem starts to go into much more difficult territory, and well, that's pretty difficult territory for the jellyfish. They have to die, and that's I don't want to discount that, but this poem is called "Wedding Vows." What they don't tell you about love is that a death certificate has little sway on what happens within the human heart. That marriage as defined by others can be both legally relevant and complete bullshit. On Wikipedia, someone has typed the following: Turner married fellow poet Elise Kuznets in Orlando, Florida on September 25th, 2010. They remained married until her death on September 13th, 2016. Somebody typed that in and then shared it with people, you know? What they don't tell you about love is that after a loved one dies, people will ask, how long were you together? As if they can't see two within one. The bright vessel of the body in motion, the funeral ship of love, that which the survivor has become, a brightly burning thing, who vowed the starlit amphitheater of the mind, the ancient ocean within, that landscape where memory keeps us all, this body, this home, this housing of the soul. What they don't tell you, because they didn't lean in close enough to hear the words when they were spoken, is that there are many among us who refuse to repeat the vow until death do us part. She's a very fine poet, and thank you. I was at the Great Mother Conference up in Maine a year ago or so, and I read that poem and shared that. I didn't know that there were two people there in different departments, I guess it is, but they call themselves Wikipedians. Like that's like a creature on the planet. There are Wikipedians out there, you know, and they manage the archive in a sense, and so they were both moved by that poem, and I told them, I said that, you know, as authors, all of you are writers too, I know, and a couple of readers. I talked to at least one person who was a reader specifically. But those of us who are writing and we're sharing our work out in the world, once it goes in the world, it's on its own and has its own way. And one of my teachers, T.R. Hummer, he said many years ago, he said, you know, you have to the work has to survive on its own. It has to, you know. And so I've tried to take that to heart as much as possible. So when they asked, these Wikipedians asked me if what would I like it to say? And I said, that's not for me to do, you know, as difficult as it was to see, you know. So.
My husband died 4 years ago, and that's exactly what it feels like.
Wow. What's your name?
Renee?
Thank you, Renee. I appreciate it. What was his name? What is his name?
Edwin
Edwin.
Ignatius.
Edwin Ignatius. What an amazing name.
Yeah,
I got,
he
yeah.
chose Ignatius because that was his favorite saint.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. Maybe thank you for sharing that. I'll share a little bit of Elise so you can get a sense of her. This is called 141. She often sculpted the air with her hands as she spoke, gesturing the world into being. And I'm reminded of this as I restart the video so that I might be with her again. The daylight flooding in through the window behind her. A day I can't quite place on a calendar, though it's summer 2016, and in a moment she's going to say, oh, how fun, as she opens a package filled with tiny prayer bowls, showing me how she'll hide away messages in each before shipping them to loved ones across the globe. In a few seconds, she'll blow a kiss to me and we'll say, I love you, before she follows with, later, maybe we can. Then I'll never hear the completion of that thought. I'm left with this 1 minute, 41-second video, just slipping into the past. The 2020 is a blurring of images and voices that fade as soon as she describes the biplanar wings of a dragonfly she's conjured from the empty air, jeweled in its beauty. Delicate, its tremulous body waiting for her to breathe the concept of flight that makes it so. To do this, her left hand is laid open as her right caresses the air in a motion that shapes the life form being awakened there, flower by lizard by bird. A sweet kind of magic from within the domain of the imagination. Petals unfurl their velvet tongues at her lightest touch. A cat's tail curls its subtle questions into the languid air. Birds sing their way closer to me, whether anyone can hear them or not, while the panting lizards cool themselves in the shadows. I move the cursor, press play again. If only to hear Elise talk about pleasure, to hear her say, it's true, I get so much joy in doing this. And to linger with her there, in that brief suspension, her head tilting as if sunlight were pouring into her, while she holds an invisible prayer in her fingertips that she will soon place within the bowl of her hand. This one might get a little sexy. I don't know if we're ready this early in the morning, but there's no non-sexy time, right? It's all sexy time. But these poems, it's just like difficult, difficult, difficult. And I'm not very good at making them not difficult. So, so we'll see what that might mean. This is called Coconut Oil. I don't remember the PA's name, but she recommended coconut oil as a lubricant, saying, sure, the literature leans toward water-based lubes, but you can find this anywhere. Any grocery will carry it, and it's a natural moisturizer, easy to clean from the sheets. And so when I discover a jar in the house years later, I unscrew the metal lid, close my eyes, and breathe in a series of moments from a springtime made of fog and confusion, sunlight and surprise, chemo treatments, a trip to Hawaii, the breakers rolling in just outside our bedroom window, the night's perfume carried over the Pacific and reminding us of our time in Japan, Thailand before that, before the cancer, when the future was wide open. Elise cupped my hips with the soft pads of her hands, using them as a break at the iliac crest, while coconut sugared the room with its fragrance. She eased me down inside of her, pressing back when the raw pain furrowed across her brow, crimped her mouth, her palm heels nearly pushing me out, as I couldn't help but think of the tumors in her bones, spreading from sternum to vertebrae and then scaling the ladder of the spine in both directions, so insidious, so cruel. That cancer revealing itself by fracturing two of the bones in the middle of her back a couple years before, and how, afterward, I thought it my fault, that I'd done this without realizing the danger inside of her. On a sunlit afternoon, shared in a tangle of salt and muscle, our limbs half on, half off the bed, the mattress stripped of its sheets, and Elise spurring me harder, harder, so that even now I remember it with a snap of a finger, and that familiar regret returns, lingers. So I close my eyes and breathe in coconut until the electricity shifts its current, blue and crackling, the calendar flipping through months, years, our maroon sheets slipping off the bed, the candle's bright tongue rising in light as her hands guide me down, slow, all of it so tenuous and fragile, on the cusp of pain, until the oils begin to soften and glide, and her body, easing now, gives way to the smooth motion of flesh, the two of us made one again, made strange and ancient and new and beautiful. Okay, so we don't talk sexy time. We'll just move on to the next poem. Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe not. How about this? This is called Lovers. They kiss the bruised flowers in each other's skin. They moan in a sweet friction of muscle and bone. They flare in blue sparks from the tips of their hair. They transform the grief and pain stored deep in the body. They transpose sheets of cotton and silk into a tablature of music. They drink from the loneliness and solitude, the quiet of a lifetime. They taste the bright days of summer, the dying leaves of autumn. They write with their tongues over the curving sweep of history. They write with cubes of ice melting in their mouths, cursive by cursive. They astonish themselves with what they discover in one another. They spiral one soul into another, the world vanishing around them. They blur their bodies in a tangle of limbs and hair and fingers and tongues. They ride the animal of pleasure until it shudders through the body and waves. They ride the twin signatures of the Valkyries in their light-encrusted saddles. And they cry out to the gods in the heavens and to the gods within themselves. And they cry out in midnight and in the pealing thunder of an afternoon. And they come with mouths bitten into flesh, a flood of endorphins released. And they come exhausted into the sweat-soaked moonlight, the sun-drenched day. And the lovers come until they're made radiant, breathless, wordless, vulnerable. Because they are lovers transforming the pain and grief stored deep in the body. Because they are lovers moaning in a sweet friction of muscle and bone. Because they are lovers flaring blue sparks from the tips of their hair. Because they are lovers kissing the bruised flowers in each other's skin. Should check the time here. 11. What does 11 mean? And sometimes when I come up and read poems, I don't know how this is for you, Ross. I'll read poems and it's like, and then I look at a clock and I'm like, what does that mean? Am I supposed to read till 3? Did I finish? Because the poems take us to a time, it feels kind of timeless, and then Yeah. But it is a practical thing to know. I could read so many things. What to read now? I'll read this one that's right in front of me. It's called In the House of Flesh and Bone. There will be rain in the story, a series of voices, birds maybe, a character flaw some find charming. There will be pain, of course, and laughter, some small, sweet gesture, like the way she used to hold my face in the tender cups of her palms before kissing me, moments that gather into something one might call a life. This story we tell ourselves as loved ones cross over one by one. We are learning how to care for the dead, each in our own way. So too the living. We lean our heads back and listen to music translated from the air as memory draws our fingers through a loved one's hair before brushing the stone to reveal the pulling shadows of the chisel. It's something like prayer, I think. The way others might talk to God within the vaulted spaces of the body, one's voice spoken into the long corridors swept clean of shadow, there by the opened windows, where the birds might one day fly in at dawn, singing. So I'll say that last part. There by the opened windows, where the birds might one day fly in at dawn, singing. Yeah. Not to get too Robert Bly, but I felt like I stumbled on that one poem. Do you know he would often repeat his poems, right? He'd read them twice. And I didn't know this. I was from California, and one time somebody was sick, and they asked me to go up and read in Bly country. So I was up in Minnesota, and I went to a beautiful church, and I was reading there, and it felt very congregation-ish, and read a poem, and I thought it was okay. In my body, I felt like that was pretty good reading. And after I asked the organizer, I said, "Was that okay?" And he was like, "Oh, you have very fine poems. They were very good, but you really should read them twice, And I was like, what's he talking about? It's like this thing, I didn't know it was a thing, but it's, yeah. I think I'll read, this will be the 2-poem warning. How about we'll do that? This is called Paper Lanterns. We lift our hands into the banded light at dusk and let go. As each lantern wobbles on the air before the invisible carries it into the heliotrope of twilight. It is something to see, this quiet fleet of prayer rising into darkness. And it's not unlike the weather balloons a man once filled with helium tethered to a lawn chair, a fragile airship he built to enter the sublime, ascending into the atmosphere before floating over the Pacific at 15,000 feet. In Japan, Yoshikazu Suzuki followed his lead, departing from Lake Biwa, where I once stood before the gravestone of Matsuo Basho, hoping it might help me in the creation of my own haibun, which it didn't exactly help me, but I was hoping. I have no way of knowing what Suzuki might have been thinking. He was last spotted 500 miles out over the ocean, and never to be seen again. Though I imagine him still up there, coasting on the trade winds, witness to the sun and moon, clouds pluming in great anvil heads of rain, nights stunned by tree-shaped voltages of lightning. And just as Suzuki begins to despair of his solitude, slow-moving flocks of light rise up to greet him. All our earthly prayers sent from the midnight shores of our lives. And Suzuki, an old man now, drifting over the curving sphere he knows by heart, cries into his weathered hands, cries at the sweetness of it all. Everybody doing all right? Is this what we're supposed to be doing? Is this right? Am I messing this up? It's a little late because now it's the last poem, right? Okay. And I've got a 2-poem choice here. I got to see which way do we go. I think I'll go this way. It's called All Our Lazy Sundays. It's another, and I should say, Elise and I used to love, and I hope you do too, or you have maybe a different day, but we loved these lazy Sundays, and we just stay in bed most of the day and stuff, and get food and stay in bed and get more food and then stay in bed, and, but all our lazy Sundays. It's another Sunday morning on planet Earth, the cloud cover glowing with the amber of sunlight as a gentle breeze lifts the curtains at the window before sifting through our hair and swirling through the room, the two of us tangling into one, both gone drowsy with the sweet finish of dream, kissing and whispering something about the day ahead, our bodies humming with electricity, twin aerials receiving satellite broadcasts from Falcon 9 rockets, on orbit now in the thermosphere, 22,000 miles high, beaming content to ground repeaters, wave after wave, each frequency streaming portions of the invisible over and through us, as if the air we breathe carries a digital signature, the living world transposed into the ether, wave after wave, traveling through us. The bright voices of history, children laughing, the dying calling out for their loved ones, with each wave rising and falling, journalists pointing to the damage there, one says, as a tank rolls through the interior of someone's home. The journalist saying, the front line has collapsed. Civilians trapped in the fighting now flee for their lives. And as we rest here in these cloud-like sheets, the long travail of the dispossessed walks a hard road newly drafted through our bodies, and we offer no aid or comfort. We do not ease their burdens or call out their names. We only kiss and hold each other as the world moves through us, wave after wave, voices, images, people, music. This is where it gets a little silly. Funk and low bap, doomcore, dub style, nerdcore, zydeco, noise, all blurring into the wild anthem of our time, with commercials for aluminum siding and 4-in-1 shampoo, the shopping channel waiving shipping costs, so the designer handbags and costume jewelry pass right through us. Our body is a merchant's temporary showroom, an algorithmic center of expression, the bright focus of desire itself. Our bodies ringing with the sound of it, though the housing of the body isn't as tangible as one might imagine. The muscle and bone of us so solid to the touch, we are fooled into thinking we are physical. But ask the atom its name, and it will not know us. It's true. The world filters through the human frame, and we call it a life. We call it by name. We gesture to one another, say, love, I see you. I see all that you have gathered from the void, that assembly of the self, that sweet and beautiful construction. And though you are surely a vision, I see you. Here, right here, alive and human, the universe singing through you. The closest I've ever come to what others might call a God. Thank you for that. So what happens now? Do we go drink vodka, or what's the... No, I think we have a couple of minutes. Is that how this works? Where's this? Oh, my bosses. We've got a couple bosses here. Oh, okay. Oh, sure. Now's the heckling time. Let's do it. Let's bring... Yes. Oh, yeah, beautiful place. Yeah, not in a long time, though. Yeah, Elise and I stood there, and we spent far too much time videotaping those. Yeah, the jellyfish there, and this, yeah. And also in Hawaii, there's a beautiful aquarium there that also has some jellyfish in it, and we spent time videotaping them, too. So, yeah. I don't know what they thought of us, but we were amazed by them, yeah. Yeah. Yes? Yeah.
You know, certain people have different times of the day or night when they're more in tune or like to do their writing. But so
Yeah.
when you go about writing your poetry, do you have kind of a specific process that you use? How do you determine the subject for your poems? Does it just kind of come to you randomly? How would you describe that process?
Well, it's a pretty long conversation. I think if we just can, it's a
You can
big question.
couple minutes.
But yeah, like some short fragments on it, and I'm sure you've come across this. Like poets don't actually know how to answer questions. We're just terrible at it. But I'll try a little. And I spoke about this I think a little bit yesterday with some folks. But when I went to University of Oregon, I had the great honor of being one of my colleagues there, another poet who lives in Pakistan. He was studying in the United States, Naveed Alam. And he taught me to walk with my poems, because he would walk with his poems. Before they were, I should probably still keep this here. Before he would, and it's similar for me, like he might not have a poem. He doesn't know what it's a meditative practice, you know. And so like you begin meditation, and maybe there's an image, or maybe there's a fragment of language. That's what often happens to me. The two kind of combined a bit. and there might be some fragment or something. Do you mind me asking if there's a phrase that comes to mind right now? I shouldn't just put one person on the spot. That's way too much pressure. So, does anybody have just a fragment of language, or even yourself? You ask the question. Is something comes to mind? It could be mundane about plastic or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Flowers.
Flower. Well, that's one word. That's tough. Flowers. Okay, but flowers. It is flowers. How they do. I'm starting to think of the jellyfish. That might have been how that one. But flowers. How they rise and fall with the light each day. Something like that. I don't know. Yeah, I would want to work on that. But then I have a small house. I'm not a big guy, but like I could take about 3 steps and I bang into a wall. So in the biggest room I have, it has the biggest window in the house, though, so I like to be there. And so the neighbors, when they walk by, because it's a living room, they must see me oftentimes just sort of walking. Flowers, how they rise and fall, and I kind of like to, because I don't go for a walk through the streets like he would do, but I usually do it right there with my dog. I'm sitting on the couch staring at me like, what? You know, because I want to kind of set the music in my body. And I was talking about this a little bit yesterday, but the mind and the neocortex has its intentions, like rhetorical structures, story. It's so complicated to maybe make a scene where things are happening in a room, and there's this moment like, oh, good Lord, what was that about? And I want to maybe try to meditate on that, think about that in language, and house it in a stanza or a poem. These architectures, you know. So the mind is really busy at work trying to do all that kind of work. Like, what do you need for the scene? It's all set design and cinematography. What angle of the camera? How much light? You know, what time of day is? All that stuff. Real practical stuff, and beautiful stuff. But the body doesn't care about any of that. It just wants music. You know. So Naveed was trying to teach me that to let the body set the music, and then let the mind wander with the music in mind into the story. In a way, Dorian Locks, I remember she'd try to teach me by reading a poem, a draft. She would sometimes stumble. You know, when she would read my poems back to me in her office, which is a weird thing to have happen, to have one of these amazing people like read your poem to you. And but when she would stumble, she would think like a painter. Maybe it's just some connective tissue or grammar. Like if I put a comma there, just like a brush stroke from blue to green, I just need to smooth out the language, and that's fine. Maybe just something small like that. Or maybe, and she would keep this as part of her sort of process in revision, think, did the poem stumble because the music is in harmony with the story or the what's happening? Yeah, and so there's a deeper stumble taking place. And the poem knows what I haven't figured out yet, so I got to figure that out. You know, I don't know if that's and so time of day. I don't know. I'm usually sort of a sporadic kind of person, so I'm not put my butt in the chair every morning at 6 a.m. and go till whatever. I just get sort of obsessed, and I'm just like hooked up on way too much caffeine, and then there'll be like a few weeks where I'm just sort of in some zone doing stuff, and it's really it's hard because a lot of other stuff goes to the wayside, and then I start feeling guilty about the bill I was supposed to do, the promise of there, this thing, that, and but it's hard to stop the obsession, you know. So yeah, but I think all of our processes are. But I think if we can be aware of our own, if we think of ourselves the way plants have their own cycles, what are our creative cycles? And I know that, like, you know, right around February, that month that's a very generative month for me in my life. So I try, like right now, I'm trying to make sure that I kind of block. I don't promise too much for February next year. I want to keep that open so that I can have that space, because that's the growing season, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Some of your poems were very intimate.
Yeah.
A lot of people, that would be very hard for them to share. Did you find it hard to share, or have you always been able to share?
Well, this is new. This is happening in real time. You know what I mean? It's like we're right here. It's like, yeah. That's why I threw a joke ahead of time, because I'm like, it's gonna get sexy time, you know. Yeah. But no, I mean, the tricky part for me with that is more. Elise isn't, you know, accessible to me in a way where I can fully access her like volition. Like, it's our relationship that I'm talking about, and how much would she be comfortable with, you know? So I had those thoughts before publishing the book and certain drafts of things and that kind of thing. But I feel I guess comfortable. I guess not. That's why I threw the joke in, because I have a little bit of nervous, cathartic. Oh, let's laugh about this because this is might be awkward, you know. So, but I think it's important to try to be open in the world, and you know, so. And a lot of people don't talk about cancer and intimacy enough, I think, and the struggles and difficulties of it and those kinds of things. So maybe, hopefully, it opens up a conversation at some point with some people. Yeah. But thank you. Yes.
You know, we all want to be known.
Mm.
And I think when you get a hold of them authors and you read their work, you feel like they know me. And I felt that with your work, that you know me. And I am turning to know you.
And what's your name?
And
Oh, Sandy, did you get the little envelope with the money that I put on your chair? No, I appreciate it. And you feel, when you feel seen, I love that too, when you read a passage and you feel it somehow resonates with your own life journey. Yeah, I get that too. I'm a reader too, and I am a fan. And our necks get tired when we go in the poetry section. We're kind of looking, or the fiction, whatever section, you know. Why can't they stack them this way? And we could just because our necks are easy. They're made for that more, you know. Maybe are we good on time, or is that? Because I know we'll want to reset and stuff for what's that?
It's 11:16,
11:16. Could I end with a poem from Elise, a very short poem? Sure. Okay. Yep. Okay. She said it. Okay. It's called Love Poem. And it has a lot of human anatomy in it. You'll hear very quickly. I will be the invisible full moon filling your crescent of Giannuzzi, the gondola gliding through your canal of Geyser. I will be the protractor that figures your angle of Ludwig, the compass arm drawn to your areas of Konheim. I will climb your pyramids of Malpighi, drink from your cistern of Pequet. I will stroke your philtrum and fill your antrum of Highmore with sweet scent. I will love each tract, column, and convolution of your body, your 70,000 miles of blood vessels, which end to end would form a rope encircling the earth. Your heart that beats 100,000 times a day, then moors restivoured each night to me. So if you clap for anyone, let's clap for Elise. Sure. 407